1987, 4 years and 9 months. Is that correct?
That was the time that I worked as Dreamfinder.
Dreamfinder,
I
okay.
worked for them briefly in 1970. I worked for them from 80 to 82 with the Golden Horseshoe Review at Disneyland, and then I was back there again from 2006 to 2010 in the Monsters Incorporated lab floor.
Very
Also,
good.
one point, that you mentioned the Diamond Horseshoe Review.
No, the Golden Horseshoe
Golden
Review.
Horseshoe
Yes.
Review. On that DVD that's up for auction is your final performance
There you go.
at the Golden Horseshoe Review.
He gets the stuff online.
So Ron is the official voice of Dreamfinder for Walt Disney World. Is that correct?
Was.
Yeah. Okay.
You're not getting a lot of work from that right now.
Creative consultant, promotions, events, and author of books. I was looking at this bio and I figured I would be writing this thing for about a month. This gentleman has such a background in other things, it's unbelievable. So I'm going to let him talk that. So I didn't know which ones he was going to hit on tonight. So I thought I'd leave that open for Ron Schneider, our guest speaker tonight. Please give
Thank you all. Please forgive my sitting, but I'm not good on my feet for long periods of time. Which of us is? Hi. Hi. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you, all the people at World Chapter, for inviting me. It's a terrific thing to be back. I want to tell you a story. There was a woman I dated a couple of years ago. I was carrying a long-distance relationship with her. She lived up in Seattle, Washington. And she told me of a funny thing that happened that kind of reflects the feeling that I have at this stage in my alleged career. She has a beautiful house up in Seattle, and her niece, this 18-year-old girl, moved from Texas up to Seattle to get a new start up there. She was new to the town, and the very first weekend she went out with a bunch of her friends to go shopping. And she was out at Pike's Market and hit all the tourist spots. And she calls back to the house, calls her aunt, and says, "Aunt Gina, I just bought this wonderful t-shirt, which you're just going to love. It's terrific. It's very cute. On the front of the t-shirt, it has this picture of 4 men crossing a street." And that's how I feel right now in my career. Because a lot of people have seen this picture of a guy with a beard and a dragon, but not a lot of people know who he is or what he used to stand for. And by the way, do you all get the 4 men on the street reference thing? Thank you, not too sure. Can't be too sure. I was at a record store the other day, and there was a whole table full of cassettes, and this girl's sitting there with her brother. She had to be 17, 18 years old. She says, "Who are the Beatles?" And I went, "Oh, who are the Beatles?" And just a while later she went, "Who are the Monkees?" And I said, "They're like the Beatles, but they're like margarine is to butter." So I'm going to start by taking you back a little bit, telling you a little bit about my life up until Dreamfinder, and then we're going to take a look at a video, a wonderful video, which just turned up on YouTube today, which means that Arlen will be selling it to you in 3 months.
Selling is contribution to the chapter,
I
right?
see.
No money. That's right. Zero.
But it's a terrific video. What do you see? So this, basically I go back to 1952. I was born in Southern California and was at Disneyland the day it opened on July 18th. First day it was open to the public, 1955. My father had done some of the original air conditioning work on the park when it was being built. And grew up going to Disneyland. I was always very interested from early on in performing magic, puppetry, got into plays as a child, and grew up fascinated with these things. When I was 14, Walt Disney passed away. And it struck me what a tremendous impact he'd had on my life. The next time I was at Disneyland, by that time I'd already been performing for about 6 years. And I was at Disneyland, I'm looking around and I'm thinking, there's something going on here that's more than people going on rides. There's this theater, this is a giant stage, and the people that are here are the performers in this play that's going on. And I became determined to learn as much as I could about that process, how it worked, how the parks worked. So I started reading everything I could about Disneyland. And there wasn't anything. Not like we have now, boy. There's tons of stuff online. But back then, there was the Disney News magazine Disney came out quarterly with. And, that was about it. So when I was 16, Bob used to work for security, so I gotta be careful here. I started sneaking around backstage at Disneyland because I had to learn how this place worked. And it was real easy to do back then. I became very familiar with how things worked backstage, and I talked to employees. In 1970, I wrote a letter to Dave Smith, who was just starting out the archives, and he invited me up to see the archives. I was one of the first people to actually come up and see, which the archives at that time were housed in Walt Disney's old offices in the animation building. And everything was just sitting out there. It wasn't all behind glass cases. If you've ever been to the archives now, it's in multiple buildings and air-controlled environments, and everything's behind glass. Now it was all sitting out there. I walked in and just picked up the cells from Steamboat Willie, looked through them. And I got my very first theme park job in 1970. I worked wardrobe issue for the Christmas parade at Disneyland. Following summer, Magic Mountain opened up, and I was a ride operator at Six Flags Magic Mountain. It wasn't Six Flags yet. I worked on the Grand Prix, which was the Autopia. I got a job at 1520 AD Medieval Restaurant, playing Henry VIII at this themed dinner show. And went off to college. While I was in college, I spent a year as a Universal Studios tour guide, back when the studio tour at Universal was all there was. Just a tram tour. It was 2.5 hours long. You really had to know your stuff. I went back to Magic Mountain in 1977. They opened a crafts village, and I was Professor Samuel J. Spillikin. Used to sell Grandma Spillikin Herbal Cure and Indian Elixir. Cures headache, earache, toothache, toothache, neuralgia, corns, warts, bunions, calluses, scald, skin infections, hangnails, rheumatism, arthritis, muscular aches and pains, hardened arteries, high or low blood pressure, heart disease, fallen arches, or housemaid's knee. And the reason I took that job is because there was another job I wanted. Because in 1970, I saw the Golden Horseshoe Review, starring Wally Bogue at Disneyland. If you've studied your Disneyland history, you know about the Golden Horseshoe Review. It was there on opening day, ran until 1986, and Wally Bogue is still, as the show is, listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the longest running live stage show in the history of the world. I saw Wally Bogue on that stage doing his amazing act, and I decided I want to do that. That was 1970. In 1980, it was the 25th anniversary of Disneyland. They were looking for a new cast. They wanted to bring in and do 10 shows a day instead of 5. They wanted a cast for evening shows at the Golden Horseshoe. And I walked in, and because of my 4 years doing the medicine pitch at Magic Mountain and all the other training I'd done in the intervening 10 years to get myself up to speed, I was able to walk into that audition and be Wally Bogue. And my dream came true, which it will do if you pursue it, if you stick to it. As I read something very early on in Richard Bach's book, Illusions. He said, "We are never given a dream without also being given the power to make it come true. You may have to work for it, though." I read that. I was probably about 15, 16 years old. I started to cry the second I read that, because I felt it was like the universe was saying to me, you can do this. And I knew it was true when I read it. I got hired into the Golden Horseshoe Review in April of 1980. The same day, 30 minutes before Disney hired me, I got a call from Universal Studios to come be creative manager for a new $3 million themed restaurant they were doing. Because they'd also seen me performing at Six Flags Magic Mountain. They saw the traveling salesman character, they liked the character, and they put me in charge of this big themed restaurant called Womp Hopper's Wagon Works. I was Womp Hopper. And so I spent the summer of 1980 at Disneyland full-time. At the end of the summer, I went part-time on call at Disneyland, and I went over to Universal. And I was creative manager of this big theme restaurant, all themed to wagon sales and crooks and comics. We had hired this whole team of performers to work the tables. I love theme restaurants. They're one of my favorite things to do. And I did that for about 1.5 years. I was in the Golden Horseshoe for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And in the spring of 1982, Wally Bogue decides he was going to retire. And his understudy, Jim Adams, decides he's going to retire. And I was the next in line. And I didn't get the job. They went with a fellow named Dick Hardwick, a wonderful talent. He was the right person for the job. I feel that truly to this day. I was always Warner Brothers. I was always very Warner Brothers. I had an edge to my comedy. You know, I'd come up through Magic Mountain where I could do anything I wanted to. They didn't care. So I was always a little abrasive. I wasn't Disney. I was amazed at some of the stuff I got away with on the Golden Horseshoe stage because of the character. But I tried to make myself more happy and friendly. And, But Dick Hardwick had that down. About that time, one of the things that they do for Disneyland employees, and when you get into the parks, they have chances for you to meet the Imagineers. They have seminars. They tell you about the different parts of the company. You can network. And Tony Baxter was doing a presentation up at the University of Disneyland on careers at Wet Enterprises. And he was there. He was a pretty young fellow at that time. He was telling us about how he started. And then he started telling us about this attraction that he was working on at that time, which was the Journey into Imagination for the new EPCOT Center. Walt Disney used to do this too. When he was working on a project, he would pull you aside whenever he found anybody off the street, and he would tell you about what they were working on at that time. He'd watch your reaction, see what it is that made your eyebrows go up, what it is that you got a kick out of. Because this is the way that he judged what people are going to react to when they see the actual product. And Tony Baxter did that with us. He bounced all these ideas off us. And at one point, he held up a picture of these two characters, Dreamfinder and Figment, and said, and these are going to be the only characters at EPCOT. There'll be no Mickey, there'll be no Minnie. And he told us a little bit about what they represented and what they were going to be. And I had the same feeling I had the first time I saw Wally Bogue. I said, that's me. I want to do that. So I called Disney Imagineering. I had a friend of mine who worked in the sound department. He gave me a cassette recording of the Dreamfinder voice because I wanted to learn that voice so that when I went in and applied for the job, I could say, and I can do this voice. So he gave me the cassette. I go over to Imagineering, he gives me the cassette, and he says, and by the way, this is Tony Baxter, this is Barry Braverman, and come with us. Barry Braverman was in charge of putting together the ImageWorks. He's one of the men behind California Adventure, but he's a nice guy anyway. So the three of them marched me back into the nether reaches of Imagineering, and sitting there on a couple of sawhorses is this amazing flying machine with the Dreamfinder sitting on top of it, and there's a computer hooked up to it, and they say, watch this, and they throw the switch, and I saw the very first scene, the turntable scene of Journey into Imagination, run for the first time. They had just finished programming it. Then they took me upstairs, they sat me down, and they told me the story of the Journey into Imagination, how it was developed, how they put the story together, and how it all came together. The problems they had trying to find a voice for Figment. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this amazing video. And this is a recreation of the Journey into Imagination. This was created, what you're going to see here, was created by Steve Vagnini of D23, wonderful guy, and Tony Baxter, to be shown at the D23 30th year tribute to EPCOT Center, which was just a few months ago. Tony Baxter did this whole presentation about imagination, and because there are fewer and fewer of us around who saw that original attraction, they pieced this together out of home movies that Tony Baxter had of the original ride. You'll see some model shots, you'll see some concept drawings, bits and pieces of that. You'll hear my voice as Dreamfinder at the end. I plugged in a couple lines from the ride. The last thing you'll hear on this is my voice doing, Chuck McCann does the voice through most of the ride. but at the very end, I did the character on the camera crane. And the reason I'm showing this to you is not only to remind you of the ride, but I want you to pay attention to this. When they were creating the ride, they started by breaking the process of creativity down into 3 parts: collecting, storing, and recombining. The Dreamfinder is flying along in his dream catching machine. He's collecting sparks of inspiration, just like we do as we go through life. Everything we take in gets sucked in and stored in our brains, and then the way we create, the way we imagine, is we recombine these sparks into new and original ideas. That's what the ride was about. I know a lot of people didn't realize that. They thought it was just fabulous, just this wonderful, wacky thing, and it's incredible. But the thing is, there was this very serious message in that ride, which is what made it an EPCOT ride. All of EPCOT was about educating and enlightening and inspiring people. And that was the message of this ride. I contend to this day that the reason people remember Dreamfinder and Figment is not because of anything I did or any of the strolling characters. It was because of that story that we saw in that ride. When we saw him create Figment and we went along with Figment and discovered the process of imagination and finished with Figment standing in front of all these different possibilities for his future. We identified, we were that dragon. And people who went on that ride were similarly inspired and entertained. And Figment was this beloved character who was cherished by the Dreamfinder, not treated like he was a pest, like some people do nowadays in later versions of the ride. Hit it, John.
All right, what version?
Journey to Imagination recreated at D23 Expo. I'll be in my office. Let's do it again.
Thank you.
Click on the parking lot column at the bottom.
Cone.
It's playing, you just need to click on the parking lot column at the bottom. At the bottom of the screen. Bottom of the screen. That's it.
Double click.
There you go.
Right at the start of everything that's new. One in a spark, months of fame. Oh, hello there. So glad you've come on. I am the Dreamfinder. It's the most. What delightful melodies those will make. I love these kinds of fancy. Searching the universe for sounds, colors, ideas, anything that sparks the imagination. Astounding! That's the word. Oh, everything I collect can inspire amazing and marvelous new ideas. And you never know what kind of thing that you may come up with. Oh, here's my favorite. Two tiny wings, eyes big and yellow, horns of steel. What a lovable fellow. From head to tail, he's royal purple pigment, and there, voila! You've got a figment of imagination.
Dreamfinder, I'm just
Not quite. I'll throw in a dash of childhood delight. Look, Figment, some new friends have joined us.
they imagine you.
Of course, imagination is something that belongs to all of us.
You mean everyone can think of new things.
That's right, Figment, and every sparkling idea can lead to even more. So many times, we're stumbling in the dark, and then you break. What a spark!
How will you like me?
You can combine it with pulsations on a stormy night and turn it into a tale of fright. Wow!
sparks that we saw the Dreamfinder collecting in that first scene are stored in their component parts. So the room is filled with abstract ideas made manifest through different kind of props and special effects, and giant spark jars. From this, we travel through the different realms of creativity, the realm of art, literature, performing arts, science, and finally image technology, because of course the ride was sponsored by Kodak.
It's red and gold from autumn flowers, purple and blue, from twilight hours, green summer hills, and rainbows play a part, a painter's brush, a work of art. It's red and gold from autumn flowers. Look at nature at this speed, from germination, then back to seed.
Oh, there are so many places to dream about.
We can visit worlds that could be, and those of fantasy and reality.
I bet use imagination to discover all kinds of new things.
Of course, it's your key to unlock the hidden wonders of our
missed that one.
Yeah, just, oh. So that, how many of you actually got to go on the original version? A lot of us. Yeah, well, I've never known, and I probably will never know what happened. At the 25th anniversary of EPCOT, we had a panel with Marty Sklarence, and of course the question went up, what happened to imagination? And he said, well, one of the answers is one word, Kodak. And that's all he'd say. I'm convinced that we don't know the truth, and we probably never will know the whole story. I know that Mr. Eisner was not very fond of Figment or Dreamfinder. And he was coming into the 98 when it shut down. He was coming into, you know, he was well into his second 10 years. First 10 years were terrific, what Mr. Eisner did. Second 10 years, not so much.
Yeah, because Frank Wells went bye-bye.
In 94, yeah.
And he was
So,
on his own.
I was there for 5 years as the strolling Dreamfinder, which was a terrifically exciting time. Nobody had ever done a character, and nobody had ever done that character, or even a character or anything like it. And so I got to pretty much write the book and find my own way. It was quite a challenge, quite a lot of fun. At the end of 5 years, to just cover quickly the years that followed, I left the company, went over to work for Robert Earl. Robert Earl has the Hard Rock Cafes and the Planet Hollywood, thank you, sir. And he had King Henry's Feast and Mardi Gras and a couple other themed restaurants. And they wanted to put a Western themed restaurant in Kissimmee. So I got to write, direct, and perform in Fort Liberty, Wild West Dinner Show in Kissimmee. And created that ran that for a couple of years. Left there, started doing freelance. This is when I made the transition into writing in addition to the performing. I worked for Chuck E. Cheese for 2.5 years.
Sorry.
Somebody has to write the stuff. Wound up going over to Universal Studios. I was creative manager of the celebrity lookalikes, the Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy, the Blues Brothers, and all those people. And for the first 3 years at Universal, I was writing first for them and then for the entire attraction. Did all the shows for the first Halloween event, which was called Horror Nights, Halloween Horror Nights. The first year was something else.
That was the best, the first year.
Oh, there you go. I won't argue with you. I left there, worked.
What year was that?
That was I was there from 90 to 93. Left there, did some more freelance, dabbled in stand-up comedy for a while, did consulting for all the parks, worked on Mickey's Toontown, on Mickey's Birthday Land, did the train show for that. Went up to Canada for a couple of summers, was at the Banff Springs Hotel, portraying the man who built the Banff Springs Hotel. We had a themed dinner show up there. Came back down, did 6 years at Titanic, the experience, on iDrive as an actor guide there, which was a wonderful, wonderful show. And left there to go to be on the opening crew of Monsters Incorporated Laugh Floor, so I was a monster for about 2.5 years. And left there, about that time, I was